So why give him this in an election year, the cover of this deal that, you know, critics say is still going to let a lot of people in, but he gets to take a victory lap that he's gotten something done?
Yeah, well, it's definitely not going to let a bunch of people in. It's focused on actually turning people around on it. It is interesting. Republicans 4 months ago would not give funding for Ukraine, for Israel, and for our southern border because we demanded changes in policy. So we actually locked arms together and said, we're not going to give you money for this. We want a change in law. And now it's interesting, a few months later, when we're finally getting to the end, they're like, oh, just kidding. I actually don't want a change in law because it's a presidential election year. We all have an oath to the Constitution, and we have a commitment to say we're going to do whatever we can to be able to secure the border.
Members of your own party keep telling the truth over the Republican strategy of openly sabotaging bipartisan border policy. It gets tough to claim that it's all Joe Biden's fault.
And now it's interesting, a few months later, when we're finally getting to the end, they're like, oh, just kidding. I actually don't want a change in law because it's a presidential election year.
And as much as Democrats and Republicans don't trust each other on their policies and simply narrate the other's objectives for some votes, once there's a bill that both agree on, the stonewalling shows the intent is to use it for the election. And no one's better at proving it than Ted Cruz and his cartoonish scenarios.
So it's past midnight. I'm standing on the shore of the Rio Grande. The water is right behind me. I'm down the Texas border, along with 18 senators. We made the trip to see the crisis that is playing out. We've already gone to detention facilities that are overrun, many of them with families, small children. We saw multiple mothers who were nursing infant babies who had just crossed over and were being housed in outdoor holding pens where they were sleeping on the floor and nursing their babies. We're at the edge of the river. On the other side of the river is Mexico. On the other side of the river, we have been listening to and seeing cartel members, human traffickers, right on the other side of the river, waving flashlights, yelling and taunting Americans, taunting the Border Patrol, because they know that under the current policy of the Biden administration, they can flood over here. They're getting paid $4,000 or $5,000 a person to smuggle them into this country. And our policies, when they smuggle them in, the Biden administration releases them, and more and more and more.
Remember when Ted Cruz went to the southern border in 2021, right after his boss lost the election, to film a Bear Grylls-style video for some bipartisan clout? His attempts at political theater quickly turned into parodies of themselves, especially when Trump and the party leadership keeps telling voters that their plan is to do nothing.
I'd rather have no bill than a bad bill. A bad bill you can't have, and that's what was happening in the House. As you know, the Speaker, who's, by the way, I think he's going to prove to be a very good speaker. It's tough when you have a very small majority. Very tough. Mike Johnson, Speaker, he just said it's dead on arrival in the House. It's dead on arrival. We want either a strong bill or no bill, and whatever happens, happens.
It's impossible to have it both ways. You can't reveal that the situation at the border is dire, that American lives are at risk, and the administration is happily inviting danger in, right before you tell the same people that you just sent into a panic that you don't really want to do anything about it. Doesn't that make you worse than the party that's just allowing anyone and everyone in to kill your children?
I want to point out one thing to all of you. Until recently, Speaker Johnson has also advocated for new resources and new legal authorities via legislation to secure the border. The Trump administration argued the same thing with the full-throated endorsement of then Congressman Mike Johnson. Now, if Speaker Johnson continues to believe, as President Biden and Republicans and Democrats in Congress do, that we have an imperative to act immediately on the border, he should give this administration the authority and funding we're requesting to secure the border.